is we have fetal alcohol syndrome. So, fetal alcohol syndrome or yung tinatawag nating FAS develops when fetuses are exposed to high levels of alcohol in the womb. So, ibig sabihin nito na nade-develop yung fetal alcohol syndrome kapag yung nanay is buntis and then palagi siyang umiinom ng alcohol or different alcohol beverages, dito mai-expose ngayon yung fetus. Okay? These children subsequently demonstrate developmental delays and deviant behavior, including violence. Common cognitive problems associated with FAST include learning difficulties, poor impulse control, a need for immediate gratification, speech problems, and the inability to consider the long-term consequences of one's action. Research also suggests that a high proportion of FAST children ultimately demonstrate aggressive behavior. So, kapag once na na-expose yung bata or yung fetus doon sa womb ng nanay, doon sa alcohol, okay, ito yung mga common cognitive problems na makukuha niya or madedevelop sa kanya. Okay, like yung immediate gratification, speech problems, meron siyang problema sa pananalita, and inability to consider the long-term consequences of one's action. It is estimated that only 1% of all children are born with fetal alcohol syndrome. So, sa lahat ng bata, okay, nai-estimate lang is 1%. Kunwari, 1:100 lang yung nagkakaroon ng fetal alcohol syndrome. However, studies also suggest that between 40 and 80% of children in foster care are stricken with this disability. Studies also estimate that at least half of all young offenders who appear in provincial or territorial courts have mothers who drank heavily during pregnancy. So, yan yung fetal alcohol syndrome. Yung baby pa dun sa womb ng mother na i-expose na sa alcohol once na yung mother is umiinom. Okay? Doon na nai-expose. Next, we have minimal brain dysfunction. So, ano nga ba yung minimal brain dysfunction? Minimal brain dysfunction is related to abnormalities in cerebral structure. In its most serious form, minimal brain dysfunction is associated with severe antisocial behavior, including hyperactivity, poor attention span, temper tantrums, and aggressiveness. Minimal brain dysfunction has also been linked to episodes of explosive rage and has often been viewed as a significant predictor of both suicide and motiveless homicide. Some studies have found that up to 60% of prison inmates exhibit symptoms of minimal brain dysfunction. So, itong minimal brain dysfunction naman natin, so, once na nagkaroon ka ng minimal brain dysfunction, ang na-expose naman dito is yung cerebral structure mo. And then, na-associate ka with antisocial behavior mo, okay, nagiging hyper, or including also your hyperactivity and poor attention span. Yung poor attention mo, okay, hindi, yung parang, hindi agad-agad nakukuha yung attention mo. Okay, kailangan pa ng mas severe or parang commotion para makuha yung attention mo. And then, you have also temper tantrums and aggressiveness. Okay? Yung mga tao na may minimal brain dysfunction, yan yung mga nakukuha nila. Nagtatantrum sila and also aggressive din sila. kapag ayaw nila yung ginagawa ng ibang tao or nakikita nila. And also, kapag hindi nila nakuha yung gusto nila, syempre magta-tantrum sila. So, yan yung mga, or yan yung makukuha mo kapag may minimal brain dysfunction ka. Next, we have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So, medical statements suggest that between 3 and 5% of children, most often males, karamihan is mga lalaki, suffer from attention deficit o yung tinatawag nating hyperactivity disorder or ADHD. Alam kong naririnig nyo na to. In fact, ADHD is the most common reason that children are referred to mental health clinics. The suspected causes of this disability include neurological damage, prenatal stress, food allergies, and genetics. Genetics, ibig sabihin, nai-inherit ito sa mga magulang ninyo. O nai-inherit nyo ito sa magulang ninyo. Research has also found a strong relationship between ADHD and poor school performance, bullying, and lack of response to punishment. There is also a strong association between ADHD and the early onset of chronic delinquency and persistent violent behavior. So, ang ADHD na tinatawag natin, so kagaya ng sabi dito, most often na nagkakaroon ng ADHD is mga lalaki. So, dito, yung mga may ADHD na lalaki or batang lalaki is sila yung normal sila, pero hindi kagaya ng mga normal na bata. Dito sa, or yung merong ADHD, kailangan nila ng tinatawag nilang routine, yung daily routine. Yung kapag ganitong oras, dapat ganito na yung ginagawa nila. Okay, dapat kapag ganitong oras, ito na yung susunod nilang gagawin. Okay? Kasi kapag yung paiba-iba, okay, madali silang maboboard. Okay? Hindi kagaya ng ibang bata na kapag ganitong oras, ganito yung ginagawa nila, and then iba na naman. Okay? Kagaya ng sabi ko, hindi po sila normal na parang yung alam nating normal na bata. Okay? Dito sa ADHD, kailangan nila ng routine, daily routine. Para yung attention nila makuha mo agad. Okay? So, ganun po ang may ADHD. Next, we have brain injury and disease. Brain tumors have been linked to severe psychological problems, including hallucinations and psychotic episodes. People with brain tumors are more vulnerable to depression, irritability, temper tantrums, and homicidal behavior. Furthermore, research suggests that normally calm, peaceful individuals can become extremely violent after developing a tumor. When tumors are removed, however, normal behavior patterns can resume. Studies also indicate that head injuries caused by accidents can dramatically increase violent behavior and aggressiveness among normally passive individuals. One study of Montreal youth also found that fatal brain damage greatly increased the risk of violence in boys once they reach 16 and 17 years of age. Finally, a wide variety of central nervous system disease including epilepsy, cerebral arteriosclerosis, senile dementia, and Huntington's chorea can also lead to affective disturbances including episodes of rage and anger. So, yung tao na may brain tumor, guys, okay, kapag may brain tumor ang isang tao, mas nag-hallucinate sila and they have also psychotic episodes. And also, they are vulnerable to depression, okay, nade-depress sila agad, irritable din sila, and then meron din silang temper tantrums and homicidal behavior. Once na meron kang brain tumor, yan yung mga psychological problems na meron ka. Okay, the hallucination, psychotic episodes, nag-hallucinate ka na. Okay? Example of hallucination is, sample ng hallucination is, for example, yung may naririnig ka kahit wala naman. Yung parang may bumubulong sa'yo, pero kapag tatanungin mo sa ibang tao or tatanungin niya sa ibang tao, wala naman silang naririnig. Siya lang yung nakakarinig doon. Ganun po yung hallucination, yung may mga naririnig kang mga boses. Okay? Next, we have brain chemistry and violence. Ano nga ba yung brain chemistry and violence? Neurotransmitters are chemical compounds that influence brain activity. Research suggests that abnormal levels of some neurotransmitters, including dopamine, serotonin, and monoamine oxidase, are related to aggression and violence. For example, people with a history of impulsive violence often have reduction in the function of the serotonin system. Studies of habitual violent Finnish offenders, for example, show that low serotonin levels are related to hyperactivity and aggression. Research also suggests that individuals with a low supply of monoamine oxidase are more likely to engage in sensation-seeking activities, including violent behavior. It is interesting to note that females generally have much higher levels of MAO than males do, a fact that could help explain gender differences in aggression. Ano ba yung tinatawag nating dopamine, serotonin, and monoamine oxidase? Okay, first, ano ba yung dopamine? Okay? Dopamine is a type of neurotransmitter. Okay? Dopamine, your body makes it. Okay? Ginagawa yun ng katawan mo. And your nervous system uses it to send messages between your nerve cells. That's why it's sometimes called a chemical messenger. Also, dopamine plays a role in how we feel pleasure. Okay, so tumutulong ang dopamine para makaramdam tayo ng pleasure. It is also a big part of our unique human ability to think and plan. So, tumutulong din yung tinatawag nating dopamine in the way na mag-isip tayo and magplano. So, yon yung tinatawag nating dopamine. Next, ano naman yung tinatawag nating serotonin? So, yung tinatawag naman nating serotonin, okay? It is the key hormone that stabilize our mood. So, yan yung hormone na nag-i-stabilize dun sa mood natin. Okay? Parang binabalance niya or pinapakalma niya. Okay? Our mood, feelings of well-being, and happiness. So, siya yung nag-i-stabilize dyan sa mga yan. And also, this hormone or yung serotonin impacts our entire body. It is also enables our brain cells and other nervous system cells to communicate with each other. Serotonin also helps with sleeping, eating, and digestion. Okay, hindi lang pala siya nakakatulong or hindi lang pala niya ini-stabilize yung moods natin, yung feelings of well-being, and yung happiness. Nakakatulong din pala siya sa pagtulog natin, pagkain, and sa digestion. So, yan naman yung tinatawag nating serotonin. Next, what is monoamine oxidase? So, yung monoamine oxidase naman is the enzyme principally responsible for degradation of amine neurotransmitter, like we have the so-called norepinephrine and the epinephrine or serotonin and dopamine. So, ito naman sa monoamine naman, So, kagaya ng sabi ko, ang monoamine oxidase are family of enzymes that catalyze the oxidation of monoamines, employing oxygen to clip off their amine group. Okay? Matatagpuan itong monoamine oxidase, okay, sa outer membrane of mitochondria. Okay? In most cell types of the body. Itong monoamine oxidase, okay, tinutulungan niyang tanggalin yung tinatawag nating mga neurotransmitter like yung serotonin, dopamine, yung tinatawag din nating norepinephrine, then ano pa yung isa? No, it's not norepinephrine. It's norepinephrine. Okay? So, yun yung mga tinatanggal niya na neurotransmitter. And also, we have two kinds of monoamine oxidase. We have the monoamine oxidase A and the monoamine oxidase B. So, itong tatlong to, okay, ayan yung mga neurotransmitter or chemical compounds that influence our brain activity. Next. So, let's go now to genetics and violence. Genetics and violence, the first criminologists, including Lombroso, often believed that antisocial behavior had a genetic basis. In other words, they believe that some people are born criminals. As discussed above, this early work has been thoroughly discredited by enlightened thinkers. In the 1960s, however, the debate over genetics and violence emerged once again. Much of this revival centered on the famous XYY controversy. XY is the normal chromosomal pattern for males. However, some males in the general population have an extra Y, kaya naging XYY. Many came to believe that these XYY males were much more aggressive than normal males and often engaged in serious violence, including homicide. This led to suggestion that XYY males should be identified at birth and thoroughly monitored by the state in order to prevent violence. However, research eventually found that most violent offenders, including the majority of serial killers, did not have an extra Y chromosome. Interest in XYY theory subsequently diminished. So, nung na-research nila na eventually, yung mga majority of serial killers or yung mga gumagawa ng homicide is or wala naman pala silang tinatawag na extra Y. Okay, ibig sabihin, karamihan pa rin ng gumagawa ng crime is they have the normal chromosomal pattern of males, yung tinatawag nating XY. Okay? Nonetheless, a number of contemporary scholars remain highly interested in genetics. Some biosocial theories, for example, have gone so far as to state that certain violent personality traits, including psychopath or psychopathy, may be inherited. So, yung tinatawag nating psychopath or psychopathy is pwede ring ma-inherit. So, yung genetics, kasi yung tinatawag nating XYY is a genetic. Okay? Ito yung XYY kasi is yung tinatawag nating abnormal genetic. Ang normal chromosomal pattern kasi natin is XY. So, karamihan pa din po ng gumagawa ng crime or yung may mga tendency na gumawa ng crime is wala namang extra Y. Okay, normal pa rin yung chromosomal pattern nila. But, other scholars or other chemist, okay, naging interested pa rin sila sa pag-aaral ng genetics natin. And also, twin studies have become one of the most popular methods of examining a possible genetic basis for aggression. If inherited traits actually cause behavior, twins should be quite similar in their propensity for violence. However, since twins are most often brought up in the same social environment, determining whether their behavior is the product of biology or social condition is quite difficult to determine. Researchers have tried to overcome this obstacle by comparing identical MC twins with fraternal DC twins of the same gender. MC twins are genetically identical, while fraternal twins only share half their genes. Thus, if genes actually impact aggression, identical twins should be more similar in their violent behavior than fraternal twins are. A number of studies have produced findings that are consistent with this hypothesis. For example, studied over 3,000 twin pairs and found a 52% correspondence in the aggressive behavior of identical twins compared with a correspondence rate of only 22% for fraternal twins. Other researchers have concluded that people who share genes also share similar personality traits regardless of their environment in which they were raised. This has led some biosocial experts to conclude that identical twins may share genetic characteristics that increase or decrease their probability of engaging in violent and criminal behavior. So, pinag-aralan din nila yung mga kambal. Okay? The fraternal and also the fraternal and identical twins. Tinignan nila kung kapag identical kasi, ibig sabihin magkapareho sila. Pero pag fraternal twins naman, half lang. Okay? Yung pagkakapareho nila. So, pinag-aralan nila, they studied 3,000 twin pairs and found 52% of the 3,000 correspondence in the aggressive behavior of identical twins. Siyempre, once na yung kakambal niya, okay, have an aggressive behavior, ibig sabihin, meron ding possibility dun sa mga identical twins na magkaroon din ng aggressive behavior yung isa. Kasi sa identical twins, they have 52% correspondence. And then sa fraternal twins naman, 22% lang. Kasi fraternal, half lang. Nung, half lang yung pareho sila. So, yan naman yung pagkakaiba ng identical and fraternal twins. And sabi din, other studies, however, have found very little evidence that identical twins are more similar in criminal behavior than fraternal twins or non-twin siblings are. Okay, so, eto naman, sabi din dito, authors of these reports maintain that siblings often share similar social environments and that it is the social environment, not genes, that produces similarities in violent behavior. Contagion theory, for example, holds that siblings, especially twins, often behave in a similar fashion because they are raised in the same families and are exposed to the same social and economic condition. So, sabi dito, okay, ang nakakapag-produce daw ng violent behavior nila is hindi yung genes na magkapareho sila, kung hindi yung social environment kung saan sila nakatira or kung saan sila nakikipag-socialize. So, yun naman yun. Continuation lang nito yung tinatawag nating genetics and violence. Next. And ito din, continuation na lang din. Just read na lang kasi parang basahin nyo na lang kasi dinagdag ko na lang ito. And also, continuation din ito ng genetics and violence natin. So, let's go now to other theory. Let's go to the evolution theory. Ano nga ba yung tinatawag nating evolution theory? Evolution theory, the final biosocial theory to consider, is based on ideas about human evolution. Experts in this field argue that as human beings evolved, certain traits, emotions, and characteristics became genetically ingrained. Jealousy, for example, is a human emotion that may have evolved in order to keep families together and increase the probability of reproduction. Evolutionary theory has most often been used to explain gender differences in both violent behavior and sexual activity. According to some evolutionary theorists, in order to ensure the genetic legacy, it is advantageous for males to mate with as many females as possible. On the other hand, because of the physical toll of a long gestation period, it is advantageous for females to mate with only few males, especially those who are thought to be nurturing or carry the best genetic material. Because of these different mating strategies, it has been argued that the most aggressive males have historically been able to mate with the largest number of women. So, itong evolutionary theory naman natin, ang sinasabi lang na magiging advantage for males, okay, to mate or maghanap ng mga babae, okay? So, sinasabi dito na mas magiging advantage for males na mas makakahanap sila ng mas marami nilang kamate na females. Okay? In other hand naman, kapag female naman, okay, advantage din sa kanila pero few males lang. Okay? Especially those who are thought to be nurturing or carry the best genetic material. Para at least mag-evolve yung generation or yung legacy ng dalawang tao na yon. And also evolutionary theory, okay, often used to explain gender differences and both violent behavior and sexual activity. So, yan yung tinatawag nating evolution theory. Next, from an evolutionary perspective, violence is thought to have developed as a male reproductive strategy because it can first eliminate or deter genetic competition. Example, prevent rival males from getting the opportunity to mate. Second, serve as a method for displaying physical strength, genetic superiority, and attracting females. And third, deter females from living and mating with other males. In our distant past, therefore, male aggression may have frequently lead to reproductive success. If so, aggressive traits would be more likely than passive traits to be passed on the next generation of males. Thus, it is often assumed by biosocial experts that the descendants of aggressive males account for the fact that even in modern society, men continue to be more the largest number of women. So, ito yung mga reproductive strategy. Okay? Eliminate or deter genetic competition, serve as a method for displaying physical strength, and deter females from living and mating with other males. Next, we have arousal theory. According to arousal theory, people's brain functions differently in response to environmental input. In general, people attempt to maintain an optimal level of arousal. Too much stimulation causes anxiety and fear, while too little stimulation leads to boredom and depression. However, individuals also differ dramatically with respect to their cognitive ability to process environmental stimuli. In other words, some people feel comfortable with very little stimulation, while others require a high level of environmental input. These sensation seekers or thrill seekers are much more likely to engage in a wide variety of risky activities, including violent behavior. Unfortunately, all the factors that determine an individual's optimal level of arousal have not yet been determined. Possible sources include brain chemistry, including yung tinatawag nating serotonin level and brain structure. Okay? Kagaya ng sabi ko, yung tinatawag nating serotonin, ito yung hormone na nag-i-stabilize ng mood and feelings of well-being natin and the happiness. And then, yung tinatawag naman nilang, so dito sa arousal theory natin, kailangan ng isang tao, okay, na i-maintain to maintain an optimal level of arousal. Kasi kapag hindi ito na-maintain and too much yung stimulation nila, magkukos ito ng anxiety and fear. Okay? So, yun naman yung tinatawag nating arousal theory. So, we have part 3. So, let's continue part 3.